It was supposed to be a night about empowerment, elegance, unity, and the celebration of women rewriting the rules of success. But instead, it turned into a moment Hollywood will be whispering about for years. The cameras weren't supposed to catch it. The guests weren't supposed to talk about it. But they did. And now, the whole world is asking the same question. What really happened between Meghan Markle and Emma Grede that night in Los Angeles? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Picture it, the Four Seasons Beverly Hills, glittering under the golden LA sky. Black SUVs pull up in a slow procession, each one unloading the kind of star power that could make a red carpet blush. Serena Williams, Zendaya, Reese Witherspoon, even Kim Kardashian herself was rumored to make a late entrance. It was the event, a private, high-profile female empowerment dinner hosted by Emma Grede, the co-founder of Good American, a Forbes power woman, and a figure whose influence in fashion and business extends well beyond the glossy pages of Vogue. The guest list was curated, personal, and tightly guarded. Every seat had meaning. Every name was intentional. And yet, somehow, one name wasn't on that list. Meghan Markle. You heard that right. The Duchess of Sussex, the woman who once shook the foundations of the British monarchy with a single interview, had not been invited. Not officially. Not personally. Not at all. But then, how did she end up there? Was it a misunderstanding? A setup? Or was it a power move gone wrong? The air was thick with speculation long before Meghan's arrival. You could almost feel the tremor in the Hollywood gossip circles that day. Whispers about a surprise guest, about someone trying to make a statement. But no one, not even the most seasoned PR insiders, expected what would unfold when Meghan Markle stepped through those ballroom doors, smiling like she owned the room. Now, pause for a second. Imagine being in that crowd, watching the Duchess glide past you, cameras flashing, reporters frozen. Everyone's eyes dart between Emma Grede, the host of the evening, and the unexpected royal who wasn't supposed to be there. And then, the moment that sent chills through the room, Emma's polite smile tightens. Her posture shifts. She leans toward her assistant, and suddenly, a pair of suited security guards begins moving, discreetly, but deliberately, toward Meghan. It was the kind of scene you'd expect in a drama, not at an empowerment dinner. But this wasn't fiction. This was Hollywood. And in Hollywood, optics are everything. So what went wrong? Let's rewind a bit. Because to understand why this moment exploded, you have to understand the tension simmering beneath Los Angeles's glossy surface. The tension between image and influence, between authenticity and power, and between two women whose lives have been defined by how they navigate both. Emma Grede, the host that night, isn't your typical socialite. She built her empire from scratch, rising through the fashion industry with grit, strategy, and a fearless sense of control. She's partnered with the Kardashians, worked with Vogue, and sits on multiple boards advocating for women in business. In LA, she's not just a celebrity, she's a gatekeeper. If you're on her guest list, it's a stamp of approval. If you're not, it's a quiet statement in itself. And then, there's Meghan Markle. Once Hollywood's sweetheart, now one of the most polarizing figures in modern celebrity culture. After stepping down from royal duties, she sought to redefine herself, not as a duchess, but as a global voice for women, equality, and empowerment. The irony? The very circles she once dreamed of conquering now regard her with caution. Some see her as a visionary, others as a PR risk. And in LA's unspoken hierarchy of power, perception is currency. So, when word began to spread that Meghan might make an appearance at Emma's dinner, without an official invite, it wasn't just gossip. It was a social earthquake. Was Meghan trying to reclaim her Hollywood relevance? Or was she genuinely showing support for a cause she believed in? That's the question that divided the room even before she arrived. As guests mingled beneath chandeliers and champagne glasses clinked, the mood was electric but uneasy. Some whispered, she wouldn't dare. Others smirked, of course she would. And then came the flashbulbs, that telltale ripple of attention that only one person could command. Meghan Markle had arrived. She was radiant, effortlessly composed, wearing a sleek black gown, understated, elegant, and camera-ready. Her entrance was calculated perfection, but to the people in that room, it was chaos disguised as confidence. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Emma Grede, who had been greeting a guest from Netflix, turned, and for the first time that night, her smile faltered. The silence was almost cinematic. You could sense the shock morphing into a mix of curiosity, confusion, and disbelief. Some guests exchanged looks, the kind that say everything without a word. Why was she here? Who invited her? And that's when the tension cracked. Emma, ever the professional, walked over to greet Meghan. From a distance, it looked cordial, polite. But those who stood close enough swear they could feel the chill in the air, the kind of chill that cuts through politeness like glass. Emma's tone was firm, controlled. Meghan's smile wavered, just for a moment. The cameras caught her expression, that split-second flicker between confidence and uncertainty. And that's when it happened, the moment that would dominate every gossip column, every blog, every social media feed for days. Emma Grede leaned slightly toward security, her voice calm but unmistakable. "Can we handle this, please?" The room shifted. Guests pretended not to stare, but every eye followed as two security officers approached Meghan. Quietly, respectfully, but with authority. One whispered something. Meghan blinked, her posture tightening. Her public grace held, but the message was clear. She wasn't supposed to be there. Now, imagine the irony. A dinner meant to celebrate female empowerment, now unfolding as one woman publicly asks another to leave. Was this hypocrisy? Was it personal? Or was it simply business? No one knew in that moment. But everyone could feel it. Something deeper than etiquette was being exposed. The question wasn't whether Meghan belonged in the room. It was whether she still belonged in the world she once dreamed of conquering. Because in Los Angeles, invitation isn't just a formality. It's validation. It's power. And that night, power was shifting, fast. Let's not forget the setting. This wasn't a chaotic public event. It was intimate, controlled, designed for connection among elite women who didn't need to prove anything. And yet, here was Meghan, walking into a space where her very presence raised questions about motive, intention, and authenticity. Some guests pitied her. Others judged her. A few admired her boldness. But one thing was clear, no one was indifferent. And that's the secret truth of Hollywood. Being ignored is the real exile. Being talked about, even scandalously, still means you matter. So maybe Meghan knew exactly what she was doing. Maybe the uninvited guest narrative wasn't an accident at all. Maybe it was the perfect setup for another reinvention, one headline away from sympathy, one photo away from going viral. But even if that was her plan, something went wrong. Because Emma Grede wasn't just any host. She's strategic, fiercely protective of her brand, and acutely aware of optics. Allowing an uninvited duchess to hijack her event would signal weakness, a loss of control. And in the circles Emma runs, control is everything. That's why the next few moments were so pivotal. It wasn't about pettiness or celebrity ego. It was about dominance, about boundaries, about who gets to define the narrative. As Meghan stood her ground, cameras subtly shifted. You could see her smile tighten, her fingers interlace. The guards paused, clearly waiting for instruction. Emma's assistant whispered something in her ear. Emma nodded once, composed but resolute. And in that instant, everyone knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a statement. Guests murmured. Phones buzzed discreetly under the table. Someone, maybe a publicist, maybe an influencer, was already drafting a cryptic Instagram caption. What started as an empowerment dinner had just become a spectacle. And Meghan? She seemed to realize it too. Because even as she stood under those blinding chandeliers, surrounded by people who once welcomed her with open arms, she looked isolated. For the first time, it wasn't about being the center of attention. It was about being out of place in plain sight. You can almost imagine her thoughts racing. Should she leave gracefully? Stand her ground? Pretend nothing's wrong? But before she could decide, before anyone could predict the outcome, one thing became unmistakably clear. This night was no longer about celebration. It was about confrontation. And whether she liked it or not, Meghan Markle had just become the headline again. Because the truth? Power doesn't like surprise guests. And in Hollywood, showing up uninvited can be the most dangerous move of all. But here's the twist. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was the culmination of months of quiet tension, hidden resentments, and shifting loyalties behind LA's glittering smiles. Emma's decision to act wasn't random. It was the breaking point of something much bigger. Something that had been brewing for a long time. What exactly? Well, that's where things get messy. Because the story didn't start at that dinner, and it definitely didn't end there. Something had been set in motion long before Meghan ever walked through those doors. And when you find out what that was, you'll see why this night changed everything. Because what came next would shake not just the room, but Meghan's entire Hollywood standing. And no one, not even Emma, saw it coming. They say in Hollywood, you're only as powerful as the people who invite you. And on that night, the guest list wasn't just a collection of names. It was a hierarchy, a silent statement of who mattered, who didn't, and who was quietly being pushed out of the inner circle. The dinner wasn't publicized. No press releases, no promotional banners, not even a leaked seating chart. It was a ghost event, known only to the most connected women in entertainment, fashion, and business. The kind of thing you didn't apply to attend, you were chosen. And that's where the real drama began. Because when that list started circulating, privately, discreetly, people noticed something strange. One name was missing: Meghan Markle. Now, to some, that might not sound like a big deal. After all, maybe she was busy. Maybe she wasn't in LA. Maybe it was an innocent oversight. But if you know how the Hollywood social machine works, you know there are no oversights. Not when it comes to events like this. Every name is vetted. Every table is curated. And Meghan's exclusion, whether intentional or strategic, sent quiet ripples through the industry. Why was she left out? Who made that call? And more importantly, who wanted her to know? Because here's the thing. The guest list didn't stay secret for long. Within 48 hours, it was making rounds in the exclusive group chats of publicists, stylists, and agents. Screenshots were shared. Names were highlighted. And one recurring message appeared. Notice who's not on it. Now, let's talk about Emma Grede for a moment. The woman at the center of it all. She's not your typical host. Every detail of her events is planned with surgical precision. From the seating arrangements to the music playlist, Emma's reputation depends on control. She believes in optics, in the story an event tells before a single speech is made. And this dinner? It was supposed to be her masterpiece. A showcase of modern female power. Women supporting women. Leaders inspiring leaders. But how ironic that the one woman who built her brand on empowerment, inclusion, and independence, Meghan Markle, didn't make the cut. So what happened? Some insiders say Emma wanted to avoid unnecessary attention. Others claim sponsors were nervous, worried that Meghan's presence could turn an elegant night into a circus of flashbulbs and controversy. Because let's be honest, wherever Meghan goes, the media follows. Every move, every glance, every word becomes a headline. And in a room full of self-made powerhouses, CEOs, activists, billionaires, there was a fear, whispered behind manicured hands, that Meghan might make the night about her. Do you think that's fair? Or just another case of Hollywood hypocrisy, preaching empowerment while practicing exclusion? Because here's where it gets interesting. While Emma's team quietly finalized the guest list, word began to spread that Meghan's PR circle had caught wind of the event. They knew who was going. They knew what it symbolized. And they didn't like the idea of her being left out. You see, in Hollywood, being excluded isn't just social, it's professional. A single missed event can signal to the industry that your influence is fading, that your star is dimming, that you're no longer in the room where it happens. And for Meghan, who had spent the past year trying to rebuild her image after several canceled deals and icy public appearances, this was more than a snub. It was a red flag. So, her team did what any savvy PR strategist would do. They started making calls. Politely, subtly, strategically. They reached out to mutual connections, friends of Emma, brand representatives, even stylists linked to the event. The message was clear but careful. Meghan would love to show her support. She's passionate about women's empowerment. She believes in the mission. But there was no reply, no confirmation, just silence. Until one name popped up, a mutual acquaintance who allegedly said, "Look, Emma respects Meghan, but this is a private affair. There's no open invite." That phrase, "no open invite," spread like wildfire. Because in LA, that's the polite way of saying you're not welcome. And yet, days later, something changed. Quietly, behind the scenes, a source close to Meghan tipped off a celebrity news outlet that she might attend a private female leadership dinner in support of diversity and representation. Coincidence? Or calculated? Suddenly, Paparazzi started camping outside likely venues. Bloggers began speculating. Emma's team grew anxious, and one assistant reportedly muttered, "If she shows up uninvited, it'll be chaos." They didn't know then that chaos was exactly what was coming. Now let's look at this from Meghan's perspective. She's built a career and a brand around reclaiming control. When the royal family rejected her, she created her own narrative. When tabloids attacked her, she launched her podcast to speak her truth. To her, not being invited wasn't rejection, it was a challenge. So when her stylist called the day before the dinner asking, "Are we going or not?" Meghan didn't hesitate. She smiled and said, "We're going." You can almost hear her inner reasoning. Why wait for permission to be part of a conversation I've already led? And honestly, isn't there something almost poetic about that? A dinner meant to celebrate female empowerment, but a woman showing up on her own terms becomes the scandal. It's the contradiction that defines modern celebrity feminism, empowerment, but only if you're invited. And yet, beneath that poetry lies the brutal truth. Emma's event wasn't just another social evening. It was a symbol of influence. The women in that room weren't just attendees, they were power brokers. Some of them fund campaigns. Others control brand narratives that reach millions. If Meghan had been left out intentionally, it meant something more than personal rejection. It meant political exile in the new Hollywood ecosystem. So, who leaked that guest list? Because make no mistake, it was leaked. No event that secret stays secret without intention. Some say it came from Emma's camp, a way to assert control, to make sure word got around about who had access and who didn't. Others whisper it came from Meghan's team, a preemptive strike to generate sympathy and make her exclusion look like an injustice. But the most intriguing theory? That the leak came from neither side, but from within the guest circle itself. A jealous rival, a curious PR insider, someone who saw the tension brewing and decided to pour gasoline on the fire. Whatever the truth, that list became a weapon. And when Meghan saw her name missing, she didn't just take it personally. She took it publicly. She arrived at that dinner not as an uninvited guest, but as a statement. A declaration that she didn't need anyone's permission to belong. But if that was her plan, it backfired spectacularly. Because Emma Grede, calm, calculating, and fiercely in control, wasn't about to let her event become another tabloid headline. Especially not with A-listers and corporate sponsors present. Her reputation was on the line, and she wasn't going to let one surprise guest upstage the entire evening. And that's where the power struggle truly began, not on the red carpet, but on that invisible battlefield of Hollywood politics. An event designed to unite women had become a silent showdown between two of its most public faces. The irony? Both women believed they were doing the right thing. Emma, protecting her event's integrity. Meghan, asserting her independence. And yet, both would walk away bruised by the fallout. The list that started as a formality had now become the spark to an inferno. By the time the first course was served, rumors were already circulating among the guests. You could hear it in the murmurs, see it in the glances, something was off. People were whispering. Did she actually get invited? Did Emma know she was coming? This could get messy. And oh, it did. Because within that elegant ballroom, under the soft glow of chandeliers and camera flashes, a war of composure had begun, a battle between grace and control, between invitation and intrusion. And as the night unfolded, every guest knew they were witnessing something historic. The fall of an illusion. The exposure of an unspoken truth. Even in the world of empowerment, not everyone is welcome. And if you thought the guest list was scandalous, wait until you hear about what happened before the dinner. The mysterious leak that set everything in motion. Because that leak wasn't random. It was a warning. And it came from someone much closer to Meghan than anyone realized. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The first clue that something was wrong didn't come from the red carpet. It came from a simple email, sent quietly, anonymously, and just hours before the event. Subject line, about your guest list. That was it. No signature. No context. But inside, a list of names, seating assignments, and one curious note at the bottom. Expect one uninvited guest. Now, in Hollywood, cryptic messages aren't unusual. PR teams trade whispers like currency. But this email was different. It wasn't gossip. It was a warning. And the moment Emma Grede's assistant opened it, her heart skipped. She recognized every name on the list, every CEO, influencer, and high-profile guest. But that last line, the one about the uninvited guest, made her stomach drop. She rushed to Emma's office. "We have a problem," she said. Emma didn't even look up at first. She was finalizing the seating chart, adjusting the spacing between the Netflix executive and a magazine editor. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that spells disaster." She handed Emma the printout. The host read it once. Then again. Her expression didn't change, but the air in the room did. Tight. Cold. Controlled. "Who sent this?" "No idea," the assistant whispered. "The email address is fake." Emma exhaled slowly, folding the paper in half. Then someone's trying to start trouble. And just like that, the fuse was lit. Let's pause for a second. Imagine being in Emma's position. You've built your reputation on precision. Every event you host is a brand extension of yourself. Every guest represents strategy. And now, hours before your biggest night of the year, someone is telling you that a wild card might crash the party. Not just any wild card. Meghan Markle. The name wasn't mentioned in the email, but everyone knew who it meant. The uninvited guest. The woman who could turn a quiet dinner into an international headline with a single photograph. And here's the question. Who would want that? Was it sabotage? A PR trap? Or something much more personal? Because according to insiders close to both camps, the timing wasn't accidental. The leak, that anonymous warning, was sent the same morning a major Hollywood gossip site received a tip from a source close to Meghan about an upcoming female empowerment dinner attended by LA's most influential women. Coincidence? Not in this city. One insider told reporters later. In LA, leaks are never random. They're strategy in disguise. So let's break this down. If Meghan's team didn't leak it, who did? And if they did, what was the motive? There are 3 theories, each one more explosive than the last. Theory 1. The warning came from within Emma's circle. According to this theory, someone in Emma's PR network, maybe even a trusted assistant, deliberately sent the email to protect her. They'd heard whispers that Meghan was planning to attend, perhaps through a stylist or mutual contact, and decided to give Emma a heads up. It wasn't malicious, it was preventative. Makes sense, right? Except how did they know? The dinner was so exclusive that even most employees at the venue didn't know the final guest count. The only people with access to that list were Emma, her assistant, and one PR manager. That's where the suspicion begins. Theory 2. It came from Meghan's side. Now this one's juicier. Some insiders claim that the anonymous leak was part of a controlled PR maneuver, a way to stir anticipation and test the room before Meghan's arrival. If the story gained traction, she'd show up and spin it as a statement. If not, she could quietly skip it. It's the classic Hollywood play. Create the buzz, control the narrative, deny the intent. But here's the thing. If Meghan truly orchestrated it, she underestimated who she was dealing with. Emma Grede isn't the kind of host who plays by emotional rules. She's a strategist. And in her world, surprises aren't welcome, they're threats. Theory 3. The double leak. This one's the most intriguing and the most dangerous. What if both sides were being played? What if someone inside Hollywood's PR ecosystem, a rival agent, a competing brand, even a gossip insider, leaked the guest list to create conflict between Meghan and Emma? Think about it. You pit 2 powerful women against each other. You get headlines, clicks, chaos, and in the end, you profit from the fallout. It's not just possible, it's typical. Because behind every glamorous LA event lies a battleground of egos, alliances, and whispers. Now, fast forward to the morning of the dinner. Emma arrives at the venue early, calm but sharp, like a general before battle. Her team double-checks everything: floral arrangements, sound setup, seating tags. And yet, that one anonymous email lingers in her mind like static. She asks her assistant, "Do we have confirmation from all attendees?" "Yes," the assistant replies. Except for one name. A publicist for a major streaming service had RSVP'd uncertain. When Emma asked why, she shrugged. Apparently, she's bringing a guest. Didn't say who. A guest. That's when Emma's stomach turned. And in that moment, she knew exactly what was coming. Meanwhile, across town, Meghan's stylist was zipping up the final adjustments on her gown. A minimalist black silhouette by Givenchy, paired with understated diamonds and soft curls. The look was calculated, elegant, not ostentatious. Serious, but approachable. According to a source who was in the room, Meghan was calm, almost too calm. She checked her reflection once, smiled, and said, "We're not here to make a scene. We're here to make a point." And that's the contradiction that defined the night. The blurred line between intention and impact. Meghan didn't plan to crash the dinner. She planned to reclaim it. To remind everyone that she didn't need an invitation to belong in the conversation about women's power. But in doing so, she triggered one of Hollywood's oldest reflexes: protect the hierarchy. You see, the LA elite operates on invisible rules. Rule 1, don't show up where you're not announced. Rule 2, don't upstage the host. And Rule 3, the most sacred of all, never make a power move without a plan for the backlash. Meghan broke all three in one night. But here's the twist. According to leaked text messages between two attendees, messages later obtained by an anonymous Instagram account, someone from Emma's PR team had reached out to Meghan's team days earlier. The message was simple: "We'd love to have you at the next event." Not this event, the next one. Somehow, that subtle difference became a catalyst. Meghan's camp allegedly took it as an open door. Emma's team saw it as a misunderstanding. And when that gap in perception collided with an anonymous leak, the stage was set for disaster. By the afternoon of the event, Emma's phone was buzzing nonstop. Publicists checking in. Brands asking for reassurance. "Are we covered?" they asked. "Are there surprises?" She replied the same every time: "We're fine. Everything's under control." Except it wasn't. Because across social media, an anonymous account had just posted a cryptic story. Tonight's empowerment dinner has an unexpected twist. One guest isn't on the list, but she's still coming. Within minutes, gossip blogs picked it up. Comments exploded. People started speculating names: Kim K, Amber Heard, Kylie Jenner. But deep down, everyone knew who it was really about. Meghan Markle, the Duchess who defied the palace, the Hollywood rebel who refused to play by anyone's rules. And as sunset fell over Beverly Hills, the rumors turned into a certainty. The paparazzi positioned themselves at the entrance. The staff rehearsed the guest list twice. And Emma, sitting quietly in her dressing suite, champagne untouched, stared at her reflection and said softly, "If she comes, we handle it gracefully." Gracefully. The word hung in the air like a promise. Or a warning. Meanwhile, inside Meghan's car, her assistant scrolled through her phone, showing her the latest posts. Meghan just smiled. "Let them talk," she said. "They always do." But what she didn't realize, not yet, was that someone had already made sure the world would be watching her arrival. That mysterious email? It wasn't just a message. It was bait. Someone wanted drama, and they were about to get it. Because as the first guests began arriving, and Emma posed for photos with celebrities under the golden lights, a second message hit her phone. This time, it wasn't anonymous. It was from an industry friend. "Heads up. She's on her way." Emma froze. Her assistant looked pale. "What do we do?" Emma smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides steel. "We'll be polite," she said, "but not permissive." That's when she gave the order that would define the rest of the night. Double the door staff. And make sure security knows the list by heart. The staff nodded, nervous. The tension was palpable. Because deep down, everyone knew. The moment Meghan Markle's car pulled up to that entrance, everything would change. And the irony? The very person who sent that first warning email was standing inside the venue, watching it all unfold. Yes, the leaker was there, smiling, toasting, waiting for the explosion they'd engineered. And when Meghan's black SUV finally pulled up to the curb, cameras flashing, engines humming, that person whispered to a friend, "Showtime." But who was it? Who sent the message that ignited the feud of the year? Was it a friend turned foe? A publicist with a hidden agenda? Or someone far closer, someone Meghan trusted completely? The truth about that leak would eventually come out, and when it did, it would expose a betrayal that cut far deeper than anyone expected. Because what came next wasn't just drama. It was destruction. And no one, not Emma, not Meghan, not even the person who started it, was ready for what was about to happen next. The moment the door opened, the entire atmosphere of the room changed. You could feel it. That electric shift, that invisible pulse that ripples through a crowd when someone powerful walks in unannounced. The chatter stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused midair. And there she was, Meghan Markle, standing beneath the soft golden lights of the Four Seasons ballroom, dressed in quiet defiance. Her gown was flawless, black silk that moved like water, paired with diamond studs that caught every glint of light. Her smile was poised, confident, but there was something else beneath it, something unreadable. It wasn't joy. It wasn't arrogance. It was intent. The kind of intent that says, yes, I know I wasn't invited, but I'm here anyway. The cameras caught her within seconds. It didn't matter that this was supposed to be a private event. Dozens of guests, influencers, editors, actresses, instinctively lifted their phones. Because when Meghan Markle walks into a room, people record. It's instinct now. History follows her like a shadow. Emma Grede, across the room, saw her before anyone else. The moment she did, her posture changed, barely perceptible, but unmistakable. Shoulders straightened, smile fixed. Her eyes narrowed for half a second, then softened into that practiced calm that only a host of her caliber can manage. To the casual observer, it looked like a moment of mutual recognition, two successful women greeting each other from across a crowded room. But to those who understood the stakes, it was the beginning of a silent power war. Now let's slow down and look at that moment from Meghan's perspective. Imagine it. You know the world is watching your every move. You know whispers have already been circulating that you weren't invited. And yet, you walk in, not hiding, not sneaking, but owning it. Because backing down would only prove them right. But still, her heartbeat must have been pounding. Her confidence might have been flawless on the outside, but deep inside, she had to know this was a gamble. She wasn't walking into a room full of allies. She was walking into a room full of gatekeepers. Women who built their empires without royal titles or palace PR. Women who didn't forget how fast Hollywood turns on its own. And the irony? The dinner theme was women supporting women. How's that for contrast? As Meghan crossed the room, her heels clicking softly against the marble, conversations resumed, but not naturally. Every laugh sounded a little too forced. Every whisper carried the same tone. Is she really here? Did Emma invite her? What's going to happen now? From one corner, an Oscar-winning actress leaned toward her publicist. She's bold. I'll give her that. The publicist replied quietly. Bold doesn't always win in this town. Now, here's something few people noticed that night. Meghan didn't walk straight to her seat, because she didn't have one. She lingered near the entrance, greeting people she knew. Serena Williams wasn't there, but a few of Meghan's acquaintances, women she'd met at past charity galas and brand events, smiled politely, unsure how to react. Was this support, pity, or professional survival? No one wanted to be the first to reject a duchess in public, but no one wanted to offend the host either. Emma Grede, meanwhile, was frozen in that impossible balance every powerful woman knows. Stay gracious, stay composed, but never lose control. She set down her champagne glass, whispered something to her assistant, and began to walk, slow, deliberate, graceful. Each step was diplomacy in motion. When the two women finally stood face to face, you could almost hear the cameras holding their breath. Emma, Meghan greeted her, that signature warmth in her voice. Meghan, Emma replied, tone cool but professional. For a split second, the scene looked civil. The perfect photo opportunity. Two successful women, smiling through the tension. But then, Emma's assistant discreetly handed her a folded note, the final guest list. Emma glanced at it, then back at Meghan. There was no mistaking it now. Meghan's name wasn't there. The tension became visible, like static between them. Still, Emma kept her composure. I didn't realize you'd be joining us tonight, she said softly, her words as smooth as silk, but edged with something sharp. Meghan's smile didn't falter. I heard it was an incredible evening. I wanted to show my support. It's such an important cause. It was polite, diplomatic, but layered. A sentence that said, I belong here, without ever using the word belong. Emma's response, a small nod. The kind that says noted. Then, she turned slightly toward her assistant and murmured something that no one else could quite hear. That was the moment the dynamic flipped. Because in that tiny exchange, that microsecond of silent communication, Emma took control back. The assistant disappeared. Moments later, security began subtly shifting near the back entrance. Quietly, professionally, like stagehands preparing for a scene change. Meanwhile, Meghan was making her rounds, chatting with guests, shaking hands, posing for photos. For a while, it worked. The atmosphere softened. Laughter returned. Maybe, just maybe, the tension was over. But Hollywood doesn't forget. Especially not when the story is too good. Some guests noticed Emma hadn't returned to her seat. Others whispered that her phone kept buzzing. One woman, a well-known brand executive, leaned over to another and whispered, "She's figuring out what to do. Watch." And she was. Emma wasn't impulsive. She was calculating. She knew any move against Meghan would make headlines, but so would inaction. And in her world, losing control of the narrative wasn't an option. So she did what Emma Grede always does. She strategized in real time. She sent a message to security, but not to cause a scene. No, that would be too easy. Instead, the order was simple. Be ready. Stay discreet. Wait for my signal. Now, remember that anonymous email from earlier? The one warning that an uninvited guest might show up? Emma hadn't forgotten it. And as she watched Meghan laughing with guests, she couldn't shake the thought. Someone wanted this to happen. But who? Because the way Meghan carried herself, calm, deliberate, confident, it didn't look like an accident. It looked like a performance. And maybe it was. Because even though Meghan wasn't officially invited, her team knew exactly when to arrive. Right after the press photos wrapped, when cameras were still lingering but guests were seated. Perfect timing for maximum attention, minimal confrontation. You can call that coincidence. Or you can call it strategy. So while Emma's guests admired Meghan's poise, Emma herself was thinking 2 steps ahead. The more Meghan stayed, the more headlines would spin this as Emma snubs Meghan at empowerment event. But if she acted too soon, it could look like bullying. Trapped between perception and principle, Emma waited, watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim her event. And then it happened. The moment that made the whole room go still again. An event photographer, positioned by the centerpiece arch, called out cheerfully, "Ladies, let's get one photo together. Meghan, Emma, over here please." The energy froze. Every camera pointed toward them. Emma turned, her smile tight. Meghan hesitated, then stepped closer, the room holding its collective breath. For the briefest second, they stood side by side, posing beneath the gold "Empower Her" sign. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. The photo, beautiful and tense, would later flood social media, dissected frame by frame. To the public, it looked like harmony. But anyone there could see the truth behind those frozen smiles. Meghan's chin tilted slightly upward, defiant. Emma's arm stayed perfectly still by her side. No embrace, no warmth. Just 2 women holding a fragile truce under the spotlight. And then, as the cameras lowered, Emma whispered something under her breath. No one heard exactly what it was, but Meghan's expression changed. Just slightly. Enough to register confusion, shock, maybe even hurt. Moments later, Emma turned and walked away. And that's when things really started unraveling. Because when Meghan tried to take her seat, she discovered there wasn't one for her. Every table was full, every chair labeled, every name card accounted for. An awkward silence rippled through the tables nearest to her. Guests tried not to stare. Someone offered a seat at another table, but Meghan declined politely, pretending it wasn't an issue. Still, everyone saw it. A duchess without a seat. At a dinner about empowerment. The symbolism was brutal. Yet somehow, she handled it with grace, at least on the surface. She smiled. She chatted. She even congratulated another guest on a recent award. But behind her eyes, something was shifting, a flicker of embarrassment, maybe anger. Because no matter how calm she appeared, Meghan understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. And just when she began to realize that, a quiet murmur began spreading through the tables. People were checking their phones, scrolling through notifications. Because outside the ballroom, the first headlines were already breaking. Meghan Markle crashes elite women's empowerment dinner. Sources say host was caught off guard. How did that happen so fast? Because someone in the room, someone attending the dinner, had already texted a journalist the second Meghan arrived. The leak wasn't just planned, it was live. The story was unfolding in real time. Emma's phone buzzed again. She glanced down, saw the headline, and finally made her decision. She caught her assistant's eye, a subtle nod, and then the signal. 2 suited security guards began moving toward the back corner of the room, slow and silent. The guests who noticed tried to act normal, pretending not to watch. But you can't hide tension like that. You could cut it with a knife. Meghan, still smiling politely, turned and saw them. Her smile faltered. Her posture shifted. She looked back toward Emma. Their eyes met. And in that moment, everything stopped. Because Meghan Markle realized what was happening. She wasn't just uninvited. She was about to be escorted out. And no one, not even her, could stop it. But here's the thing. This wasn't about security. It wasn't even about etiquette. It was about territory. About who controlled the story. About who had the power to say, you belong here. And who had the authority to say, you don't. And for the first time that night, Meghan looked genuinely shaken. The smile was gone. The composure cracked. The room, full of supposed empowerment, stayed silent. No one intervened. No one spoke up. Because in that room, everyone knew, the host always wins. But the story wasn't over yet. Because as security approached and Emma prepared to protect her event, something, or rather, someone, unexpected changed everything. A guest near the front stood up. A familiar face. A Hollywood A-lister. Someone who would not only witness what happened next, but make sure the entire world heard about it. And that moment, that's when the night went from uncomfortable to unforgettable. Because what came next would blow the lid off Hollywood's most exclusive circle. And no one saw it coming. The room had fallen into that strange, suffocating kind of silence that feels louder than any sound. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses trembled slightly as hands tried to act natural. Everyone could sense it. Something was about to happen, something none of them could quite believe was happening at this kind of event. Emma Grede stood perfectly still at the end of the long table, her expression unreadable. You could almost mistake her composure for calm. But the truth? She was furious, not in the dramatic, shouting sense, but in the precise, controlled fury of someone whose brand, reputation, and power dynamic were being challenged in real time. To Emma, this wasn't about Meghan Markle the person. It was about Meghan Markle the symbol, the walking PR hurricane, the magnet for attention, controversy, and division. And at Emma's table, her carefully curated table of world-class founders, activists, and moguls, chaos had no seat. The irony was thick enough to taste. An empowerment dinner turning into a silent showdown between two of the most publicly empowered women in the country. And here's the wildest part. The guests didn't know what to do. Some looked at Emma, waiting for her cue. Others darted glances toward Meghan, pretending to smile, unsure whether to offer her a drink or their sympathy. But Emma? She didn't move. She didn't blink. She had that quiet, almost dangerous calm of someone thinking 3 steps ahead. Her assistant approached again, face pale, voice hushed. Security's in position. Do you want us to? Emma took a slow breath. Not yet. Ma'am, the press already picked it up. I know, Emma replied. Which means every move I make from this second on will be dissected. That's when she smiled. Not out of warmth, but calculation. We do this my way, she said. And her way meant subtlety, strategy, optics. Because if there's one thing Emma Grede understood, it's that influence doesn't shout. It whispers with precision. She took her champagne glass and walked toward Meghan. Not too fast, not too slow. Just enough to keep everyone watching. Every eye in the room following her as she crossed the marble floor in that immaculate white gown that glimmered under the chandeliers. The hostess approaching the uninvited guest. It was like something out of a film, poised, elegant, but heavy with tension you could slice with a diamond. When Emma reached her, Meghan turned, smile still in place. That well-practiced royal composure that's half grace, half armor. Emma, she said brightly, I was just saying how stunning everything looks. Congratulations on this evening. It's so inspiring to see women coming together like this. Her tone was flawless, warm, controlled, but her eyes? They flickered with a mix of hope and caution. Emma returned the smile, but there was a flicker of ice in it. Thank you, she said smoothly. It's something I'm deeply proud of. Every woman here was personally chosen for a reason. There it was. The line. The subtle but unmistakable reminder. Every woman here was chosen. Meghan caught it. You could see it in the way her smile faltered, just for half a heartbeat. But she recovered fast, leaning into grace instead of confrontation. That's wonderful, she said. I love seeing spaces where women celebrate each other without limits or labels. A good line. Polished. Maybe a little pointed. The crowd felt the tension shift again. Some guests suddenly found their salads fascinating. A few exchanged side glances that said, "Oh no, this is happening in real time." But Emma wasn't one to argue. Not in front of cameras, and certainly not in front of witnesses. Instead, she placed her glass down gently, leaned in slightly, enough for Meghan to hear, but too softly for anyone else to catch. "We'll find you a seat shortly," Emma said, her voice calm but final. "Just give us a moment." And then she turned, that perfect host smile back in place, and began walking toward the stage. Her assistant was waiting nearby, phone in hand, already receiving texts from PR teams and sponsors asking what was going on. Emma didn't need to ask. She already knew. The story was out. The photos were circulating. Hashtag empowerment dinner and hashtag Meghan Markle were trending, but not in the way anyone expected. Tweets were already flying. Emma Grede versus Meghan Markle? What's happening in LA tonight? Apparently Meghan showed up uninvited. Wow, the internet doesn't wait for context. It builds its own. Inside the room, you could feel the invisible cracks spreading, through reputation, through perception, through everything Emma had tried to protect. And that's what made her next decision so crucial. She wasn't going to let Meghan dominate the narrative. Not tonight. Not in her house. So, she stepped onto the small stage near the center of the ballroom, tapping the microphone gently. "Ladies," she said with that effortless confidence, "I just want to take a moment to thank every single one of you for being here tonight. This evening is about celebrating authenticity, integrity, and the courage it takes to lead in your truth." Polite applause, smiles, relief. But those who were really listening, they caught the message. Authenticity, integrity, courage. It wasn't just a speech. It was a statement, a thinly veiled reminder that some truths are earned, not claimed. And Meghan? She heard it too. Her posture straightened. Her expression tightened, just slightly, but enough to betray the discomfort beneath the poise. She clapped politely with everyone else, but her eyes never left Emma. The energy was charged, like two chess players locked in a match where every move mattered. And then came the subtle coup de grace. When the speech ended and applause rippled through the room, Emma descended the stage and quietly gave a nod to her head of security. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It was quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to explain itself. Within minutes, two security guards began moving again, this time toward Meghan's table. One leaned down, whispered something softly. Meghan looked confused, then surprised. Her assistant, seated beside her, frowned. "Is there an issue?" she asked, her voice just audible enough for nearby guests to hear. The guard smiled politely. "Ms. Grede has requested to speak with Ms. Markle privately, if she wouldn't mind stepping outside for a brief word." There it was. The coded Hollywood removal. Not, "Please leave." Not, "You're not welcome." Just, "Let's step outside." Professional. Polite. But undeniable. Meghan hesitated. The room waited. Her public smile never broke, but her hands tightened slightly on the napkin in her lap. She looked around, saw the guests pretending not to stare, and then nodded. "Of course," she said softly. She rose, smoothed her dress, and followed the guards toward the exit. Each step felt like a spotlight. Each camera phone felt like a weapon. And Emma? She didn't move. She didn't need to. She just watched, with the serene, almost regal expression of someone who had just restored order in her domain. But was it control or humiliation? Because while Emma was re-establishing her authority in that ballroom, outside the walls of that glittering venue, the narrative was spinning in a dozen directions. Some on social media were praising her for enforcing boundaries. Others were calling her cold. And Meghan? Already, journalists were preparing think pieces with headlines like empowerment or exclusion. The night Meghan Markle was turned away. Inside, a few guests whispered nervously, "She shouldn't have come. I feel bad for her." Emma had no choice. Everyone had an opinion. No one had the full story. And that's the beauty and brutality of Hollywood power. You can control a room, but not the narrative. Emma knew that. That's why, as the doors closed behind Meghan, she turned to her assistant and said, "Make sure everything that happens next looks graceful." Her assistant nodded, typing furiously on her phone. Damage control had begun. But the real damage? It wasn't PR. It was personal. Because what no one realized was that Meghan hadn't come alone. She had allies in that room, quiet ones. Women who admired her resilience, who saw how she was treated, and who didn't like the message it sent. One of them, a high-profile actress with influence, the kind who could move headlines with a single tweet, would later speak out about what she saw. She would describe the scene in detail. She would say, "It wasn't empowerment. It was elitism." And that single comment would flip the story on its head. Because what began as a moment of control for Emma was about to turn into a viral debate that no one could control. Not her, not Meghan, not even the PR team scrambling to rewrite the script. The dinner might have ended, but the fallout was only beginning. And when that witness, that star who saw everything, decided to go public, it would ignite a war of perception that neither woman could win. Because what came next wasn't a misunderstanding. It was exposure. And it would force Hollywood to choose sides in a way it never had before. It started as a whisper, a murmur at the edge of the table, a flicker of unease that rippled through the air before anyone could name it. You could sense it, the mix of discomfort, curiosity, and disbelief that hung heavy over the dinner like perfume no one wanted to acknowledge. The Duchess was back, or rather, she refused to leave. Because while most of the room assumed that when security escorted Meghan toward the door, she'd quietly disappear into the LA night, something unexpected happened. She came back, not in defiance, not with attitude, but with precision. Controlled, calm, deliberate. She didn't storm. She returned. And when she did, all conversation stopped again. Emma Grede's face said it all. That signature calm cracked for half a second, just enough to reveal what she was thinking. "You have got to be kidding me." But Meghan wasn't joking. She walked straight toward the main table, shoulders squared, chin high, her expression polite but unyielding. And when she reached Emma's table, the head table, she didn't wait for permission. She spoke first. "Emma," Meghan said, softly but clearly, the kind of tone that cut through the silence like glass. "There seems to have been some misunderstanding. I was told I could attend." The room froze. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Emma didn't move at first. She just stared, blinking once, her expression blank, too blank. Then she set down her glass, folded her napkin neatly, and looked up at Meghan with the kind of measured smile that only people who have trained for media wars know how to maintain. "By whom?" Emma asked. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. The calm was scarier than anger. Meghan blinked, the hint of a frown appearing. "By a mutual contact," she said carefully. "Someone from your PR team reached out to mine. There may have been some confusion." "Confusion," Emma repeated, her tone neutral, almost detached. That's one word for it. Now, to anyone else in the room, it looked like a simple conversation, polite, restrained, even civil. But to those who understood Hollywood's coded language, this was war disguised as courtesy. Each sentence was a move. Each pause a weapon. Emma leaned back in her chair slightly, maintaining control. "We curate these evenings very intentionally," she said smoothly. "The seating, the guests, the flow of conversation. I'm sure you understand. Sometimes even the smallest disruption can throw things off balance." Translation: "You don't belong here." Meghan's jaw tightened ever so slightly. But she didn't retreat. Instead, she smiled, that same dazzling, media-trained smile that once charmed the world. "I completely understand," she said sweetly. "And I appreciate how much work goes into hosting something like this. Truly. But I also believe spaces like these should reflect inclusion, don't you? Empowerment shouldn't depend on invitation." That last sentence landed like thunder. You could almost hear the collective gasp that no one dared to exhale. It was bold. It was pointed. It was the kind of line that sounded inspirational on Instagram. But in that room, it was pure provocation. Emma's eyes narrowed just slightly, just enough to reveal the flicker of irritation beneath her veneer of control. "Of course," she replied evenly. "Empowerment is about inclusion. It's also about respect. Respect for boundaries, for space, for process." It was subtle, but the jab was unmistakable. The tension was suffocating now. Even the music seemed quieter. The waiters, frozen mid-service, pretended not to notice the standoff happening right in front of them. And then came the twist, the moment that turned the quiet tension into open confrontation. A guest at the table, a well-known actress known for her activism, leaned forward and broke the silence. "Ladies," she said gently, "we're all here for the same cause, aren't we? Maybe this is just a misunderstanding." Meghan turned toward her, grateful for the lifeline. "Exactly," she said quickly. "We all want the same thing. to celebrate women lifting each other up. Emma's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. Of course, she said again, too smoothly. Which is why it's so important that we communicate clearly. The actress nodded awkwardly, then looked down at her plate, realizing she'd stepped into crossfire she couldn't control. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Conversations resumed in scattered bursts, fake laughter filling the silence. But the tension hadn't left. It just changed shape, quieter, sharper, deadlier. Emma picked up her glass again, but her hand was steady. "Would you excuse me a moment?" she said softly, standing. "I need to check on something with the organizers." And with that, she stepped away. Meghan watched her go, her expression unreadable. But her assistant, seated 2 tables away, could see the emotion flickering behind the calm, frustration, embarrassment, maybe even betrayal. Because Meghan knew how this looked. No matter what her intentions were, the optics were brutal. She had shown up uninvited, and now the host had walked away from her in front of a room full of A-list women. It was power theater, and Meghan was on the losing end of it. Still, she wasn't finished. Not yet. When Emma disappeared behind the stage curtain, Meghan leaned toward a nearby guest, whispering something quietly. The guest nodded, hesitant but sympathetic. Then Meghan rose again, walking toward the opposite end of the room. Not toward the exit this time, but toward another table of influential women. If Emma was going to shut her out, Meghan would make her own space. And that's when the energy shifted again. She began engaging, talking, laughing. Her charm was magnetic, the same effortless charisma that once won over millions. Slowly, the tension began to soften. A few guests smiled. A few even took selfies. Meghan was reclaiming the narrative in real time. But backstage, Emma wasn't watching the smiles. She was watching the screen. Her PR director had pulled up the latest social media feed. "She's trending again," the director said quietly. "Half the tweets are saying she's brave for showing up. The other half say you humiliated her." Emma closed her eyes. Of course they are. Because that's how Hollywood works. Every story becomes a debate. And in that debate, perception always wins. She turned to her assistant. "We can't remove her now. It'll look cruel. So what do we do?" Emma thought for a long moment. Then she said something no one expected. "Invite her to the stage." The assistant blinked. "What?" Emma smiled. A cold, strategic smile. "If she wants to be included, we'll include her. On our terms." Minutes later, as guests returned their attention to the front of the room, Emma reappeared, microphone in hand, smile flawless. "Before we move to our keynote," she began, "I'd like to take a moment to recognize someone who has always been a vocal advocate for women's empowerment." The audience perked up. Cameras lifted. Meghan looked surprised. "Please," Emma continued, "join me in welcoming Meghan Markle." A smattering of applause. Then more. Meghan hesitated, unsure if this was genuine or theatrical, but she couldn't refuse. Not publicly. So she rose, smiling graciously, and joined Emma on stage. The 2 women stood side by side again, under the same golden light that had started this whole spectacle. "Would you like to say a few words?" Emma asked, her tone warm but unmistakably dominant. The offer of a queen to a rival who'd already been checkmated. Meghan took the mic, smiled, breathed, and then she spoke, calm, composed, perfectly measured. "I'm honored to be here," she began. "Not because of a title, or a position, or a seat at the table, but because every woman deserves to feel welcome in spaces like these. Empowerment isn't about exclusion. It's about courage. The courage to show up, even when you're not expected to." The room erupted in polite applause, some genuine, some forced. But behind that applause was shock, because Meghan had just flipped the narrative on its head. Emma nodded, still smiling, but her eyes gave it away. She knew what had just happened. The speech was powerful, gracious, but it carried an undercurrent that everyone heard. "You tried to exclude me. I turned it into empowerment." It was brilliant. And dangerous, because now, the story wasn't about Emma's dinner anymore. It was about Meghan Markle, again. Emma held the mic again, her voice smooth. "Beautifully said," she replied. "That's exactly what this evening is about, showing up for each other." But everyone could feel it. The air between them wasn't solidarity. It was strategy. 2 women locked in an invisible battle for narrative control, both smiling, both graceful, both refusing to lose. And in that moment, One thing became clear to everyone in that glittering ballroom. This wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a duel. A silent, sophisticated, headline-making duel. Because when power meets power, there's no truce. There's only performance. And as the applause faded and Meghan took her seat, phones buzzed under the tables again. Tweets, DMs, text threads lighting up across LA. Did you see that? That speech was a dig. Emma's face said everything. The footage would be online within the hour. Millions would see it. Millions more would argue about it. But inside that room, Emma Grede was already thinking about the next move, the one that would shift everything again. Because inviting Meghan to speak wasn't an act of grace. It was a trap. And when the cameras turned away and the guests began whispering again, Emma gave one quiet command to her assistant. "Make sure that video leaks first," she said. Her assistant nodded. "You want it out tonight?" Emma smiled faintly. Before dessert.